And it's interesting when you're writing this book, it stretches beyond just women in sports. And I'm not dumbing it down whatsoever, but throughout it, you're talking about the history. You mentioned the different eras. So what was
Mhm.
part of that discovery when we're talking about, women voting and all this other stuff? Because it's beyond just sports. So what was something that kind of shocked you during some of the research?
Two things out of that. Number one, to your point, this is another reason why, when you think it through as it relates to women's sports, the stakes are higher. The
Hmm.
stakes are higher. When we are in uh, a moment that women's rights are under attack, women's sports leagues are the tip of the spear for a lot of that fight in society writ large. And so I wouldn't say it shocked me as much as it was just a reinforcement of something that we see now in the moment, is that this has always been the case. And so I take you
And so
back
maybe it's
to,
shocking
yeah,
that it didn't shock you.
well,
Yeah.
you just see it again and again
Yeah.
now. And so it's like, all right, well, this is the same battle that has always been. So you go back 1891, Dr. Naismith comes up with the rules of basketball. It's like, oh, well, when did women's basketball start? Right away, right away. By 1892, there's collegiate women's basketball just as much as there is men's basketball. And by the late 1890s, there are sold out arenas and people literally banging on the ceiling to get in to see Stanford versus Cal women's basketball. What is the difference? Unlike men's basketball, which is given support, institutional opportunities, chances to thrive, there is a fight over the idea that women shouldn't even be allowed to play at all. We had a first lady, Herbert Hoover's wife, made it a fundamental part of her first lady portfolio to try and end intercollegiate women's sports to protect women. And if that protect women sounds familiar, because you're seeing a lot of people using this to essentially try and attack trans athletes in
Yeah.
sports, it's because it happens again and again and again. And once you see the regressive language, it's that much easier to kind of call it out and understand who these bad faith actors are. But the difference between the audience for men's basketball and women's basketball comes down to fundamentally the barriers that have been put in the way of women's basketball again and again. And so I kind of laugh when I hear people look purely at outcomes on this stuff and say, well, what about this gap in between? And the way I've always viewed it is, all right, let's go with equal funding and equal media attention and treat them both the same for an extended period of time. And then let's see where we're at. Because even when we're not even close to that, we saw just in the last Final Four so many more people watching the women's Final Four than the men's Final Four. But I don't know that people fully realize what a miracle that is, given how many institutional barriers there are to women's sports through the years. But it says everything. It makes you wonder, oh my God, how much bigger would that gap have been in a
Yeah.
truly equal fight?